What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. And this video is all about my favorite fighter. If you have been following this channel, I have made quite a few videos about Khamzat Chimaev. This is another one as some more information has come out about his health and things that have been impeding his fighting career. Nevertheless, he's still undefeated and he's still having extremely dominant performances. Some people have been getting on his case about the Gilbert Burns fight and also the Kamaru Usman fight, which both were victories. And I still believe and we'll continue to say that those were still both great performances. They just weren't those completely dominating fights like we've seen when he fought Li Jingliang, when he fought Kevin Holland, etc., and recently like when he fought Robert Whittaker. So those performances were just absolutely unbelievable, like we saw at the beginning of his career. And so when fans didn't see such a complete dominance for those two fights, they started to lose hope. But more information has recently come out about Khamzat Chimaev in terms of his health issues and what's really been going on. I think this sheds some real light in terms of why maybe those performances were still fantastic, but why maybe they weren't these insane, super dominant performances where he just outclassed everybody, where he just outclassed Usman from beginning to end, outclassed Gilbert Burns. So I wanted to show you guys this. This is a interview that he did in Russian. I couldn't find the full interview, but this is the clip that I came across when I was watching some content last week. So I wanted to share this with everybody in case you guys missed this. And again, to me, this is more proof positive that Khamzat will be the eventual GOAT of mixed martial arts, because I think a lot of people don't know the struggles, the trials and tribulations, all the challenges that he's been through. He talks about how in this interview that he has been told so many times by doctors that his fighting career is over and that he's done. If you remember, he did retire at one point after coming down with a severe COVID infection, having to pull out of the Leon Edwards fight. And people don't know the full backstory. And that is because Khamzat is not an excuse maker. He is, I think, somebody that we can all look up to in the sense that he takes full ownership and responsibility for his struggles, for whatever he is going through, and again puts the responsibility on himself to win and come out victorious. He says what he needs to say, but doesn't say too much. He is a truth teller, and again, just all around an amazing fighter, an amazing person, and somebody that I think we can look at as a role model. So without further ado, let's watch this clip right here. We're going to see this a couple excerpts from this interview. So check this out. There's going to be subtitles here. So here we go. And by the way, we're going to talk about what this means to have a partial thyroidectomy. I actually did look this up because I was quite concerned when I saw this video, and I'll show you one in a second.
Никому не секрет, я часто заболевал. Если взять все вместе взятых, у меня 5-6 операций.
So 5 or 6 surgeries. And by the way, another reason that people have said that he was often getting sick is because he was overtraining. So I think it's a confluence of the overtraining as well as these health issues, which eventually led doctors to decide to do this partial thyroidectomy. Now, usually thyroidectomies are done, and again, I'm not a doctor, but this is just after research that I performed on my own. But usually thyroidectomies are done if you have potential nodules or there's a possibility that you may get thyroid cancer. You could do a partial or a complete thyroidectomy and remove the thyroid gland completely. When you do a full removal, it's actually much worse because you will have to get on drugs or medication for the rest of your life to replace the hormones that are no longer being produced, right? Because you no longer have the thyroid gland. So luckily, he only had a partial one where he said 50% of it was removed. And the good news about that is, just again, in my cursory research, I've come across the fact that like the remaining portion of the thyroid will eventually pick up the pace and resume full functionality. So you likely won't have to take any medication. Hopefully that's the case for Khamzat. He doesn't go into that here, but let's keep watching.
По-моему, было. И 7-8 переломов у меня собрался. Я много раз говорил.
Actually, that's crazy. I missed that part. I didn't know he had 7 or 8 fractures. That's insane. He never told. The only thing he talked about was during the Kamaru Usman fight that he said he thought he broke his hand, but I believe it wasn't even a broken hand that he suffered. He just suffered a severe hand, I think a tendon or ligament injury. But anyways.
Или доктора больше не будешь. Пока что доказываю, что буду. Перед боем с Усманом тоже никому не говорил. Я не такой там человек, который люблю там говорить такие вещи. У меня это была проблема, то была проблема, может быть, у моего соперника тоже какие-то. И чуть было такое, температура, все такое. Мы даже задумывались там не выходить, но все равно у меня большой простой был, год не дрался, там все такое, и я так задумался, зайду, быстро задушу, но то, что те мысли, которые у меня были, не получилось, ну, слава богу, выиграли. И когда у тебя иммунитет.
So one of the things that I wanted to point out there is people talked about his quote unquote cardio issues or whatnot, which he lasted the entire fight. He lasted the full 3 rounds. And then people were like, well, if it went 5 rounds, he would have lost. It wasn't a 5-round fight. Just the dumbest commentary and observations that I've ever heard. But this sheds more light onto why he supposedly, had some cardio issues or why he didn't look invincible. And I think that's part of the issue is people want him to be like some supreme being, some super juggernaut, right, with preternatural abilities. He's still a human being at the end of the day, but he was going through major illness and major sickness. He had a really high temperature. He had a weak immune system, but he didn't pull out of the fight, and he didn't even say a word to anybody. He just went in and tried to, and his thought was, I'll just finish him early, which he tried to do, and which he almost did. He was very close to doing. But anyways, he went out and still won that fight. And so he had 2 issues going on, which we had no idea about, right? He was severely sick, and he had the hand injury that he suffered in the first round.
Упавшие, конечно, эта инфекция переходит на тебя, да.
Половина из-за...
Да, щитовидки половина убрали мне.
Да. Это же сильное влияние. Я думаю, ты сам знаешь, что это...
Да, я слышал, влияет, но, по крайней мере, сейчас, как я иду, ничего не мешает.
Не, именно вот из-за... Я знаю, что ты часто температуришь. Вот этот момент у тебя часто происходит, что ты можешь легко затемпературить. Но просто, чтобы было понятно, наверное, тем, кто не в курсе, это же 50% твоего иммунитета уходит, если половины щитовидки нету. Я думаю, это...
Я не знаю. Доктор сказал, вроде нормально все.
Ну, уже нормально.
So when I saw this, I actually got quite concerned. He said, hey, it reduces your immunity to 50%. So I got worried. So that's why I did some additional research. I'm going to show you what I found in a second. But a couple of things I wanted to point out. What does this remind you of, right? When you hear him talking about having these problems, this major temperature, but still wanting to go in and fight, to me, it reminds me of what Khabib went through when he fought Justin Gaethje. And he himself said he would have never revealed that if he would have lost. But he had a severe, I think it was a case of mumps or something. He was like severely sick leading into the Justin Gaethje fight and couldn't properly train until I think about like 2 or 3 weeks before the fight. They almost pulled out of the fight, or they were thinking about pulling out of the fight, but Khabib really didn't want to. And then he started sparring. And then Javier Mendez says, okay, a week or 2 leading up to the fight, he was starting to look like good old Khabib. And what he used was his mind and his mental strength to pull through. And then went through and had a dominant performance. He also had a broken toe in that fight. So what we're seeing with these super champions and these super athletes in mixed martial arts and the UFC in particular is we're seeing mind over matter. And that seems to be the hallmark of these super champions, of the elite that are able to go out and do the unimaginable. And I think Khamzat falls in that category too, a mind that is supremely strong. So anyways, but now let's talk about this idea of his immunity being reduced by 50%. So this really worried me because I thought, just what a tragedy. We're just now seeing him finally have his title shot. What if his immunity is super compromised and he's never able to climb to the mountaintop, unfortunately, because of this unfortunate health issues that arose during COVID. But I looked this up and it said for a partial thyroidectomy, when your thyroid is removed, the remaining portion typically takes over the function of the entire thyroid gland. So you might not need thyroid hormone therapy. So to me, if he's talking about reduced immunity at 50%, I didn't see that anywhere. And this is straight from the Mayo Clinic. So I believe that is incorrect information that the podcast host was giving to Khamzat. And he said his doctor said he's all good. I'm not a doctor and I'm not an expert by any means on the thyroid gland or thyroidectomies, but at least to me, Khamzat saying his doctor said he's all good. This is reinforcing that notion. So I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling like he's in the clear. So this is really, really exciting to me. And again, more proof positive that he's on the track and he's on the trajectory to be the greatest, because I think he's easily going to be Dricus du Plessis. And if you don't believe me, let's see what Joe Rogan has to say about Khamzat. Check it out.
So Khamzat just shot in on him and just started beating the fuck out of him.
Now here he's talking about Robert Whittaker.
Robert got up once. Khamzat dove on him again and had him down again in a second. So it's demoralizing.
Yeah. Reminded me of Khabib as well, where like you get up, you get straight back down, and then you just run out of energy, right?
Maybe even more intense, because maybe even more dominant. You know, like to do that to Whitaker like that, a guy who's a world champion, like even the Conor fight, it took a while before he was just beating Conor's ass. Like the beginning of the fight is more competitive. Like this was just a overwhelming victory.
Do you think it's different with Duplessis? Because he can wrestle.
He can wrestle. He's got very good jiu-jitsu. He hits fucking hard, and he's a big, durable dude. But I don't know if he's going to be able to wrestle with that guy. Like, I don't know, man. The Khamzat's skill is so high level, it makes me wonder. It's like some guys, like you see it in jiu-jitsu. There's some guys that look really good until they fight somebody who's really, really good. And then they get manhandled. You know, it's like everybody looks good until they face Gordon Ryan. Like Gordon Ryan can do that to anybody. Like, is Khamzat at that level? Well, it kind of appears that he is. It appears that he's, in terms of like the grappling that he possesses, seems magnitudes greater than anybody else in his division.
But it's that skill thing that we talk about. When you can have athleticism, you can have strength, but when you come up against someone whose skill is far superior to yours, eventually you're going to burn out because there's only a finite amount of strength and power that you have.
Okay, I don't know who this guy is, but the point is that Joe Rogan himself is who's one of the biggest experts. Now you can say what you want. I know some people criticize Joe Rogan and some of his commentary, but I think he's one of the greatest experts we have in mixed martial arts. He's seen everybody come and go, and he's talking about Khamzat like he has a level of jiu-jitsu and wrestling in particular that we have never seen before. And I think that's evidenced by what he did to Robert Whitaker and what he's done to so many other fighters. So it's just very, very exciting. And the last thing I'll say about Khamzat, which is so amazing, not only does he have the skill, not only now I think does he have a new lease on his health, which is very promising. And a lot of people are like, oh, Khamzat's going to need all this time off again, so we probably might not see him in the octagon again for another year. Again, that I think is something from the past, okay? He took no damage. He took 2 leg kicks in that fight. Why couldn't he turn around and fight in February at the Sydney card and take on Duplessis? I think he very well could. People have now this nonsensical notion. I could be wrong. Okay, maybe he does need more time. But I think people have now just this built-in nonsensical notion that he must need all this time and he's going to fight very infrequently, when I think really that was just the result of some of these lingering health issues. But hopefully they've now been cleared up. But the last thing I want to say is that I think part of the reason why Khamzat and these other fighters are so great is because they have this mindset, not only super strong mindset, but they take full ownership and responsibility of everything. They don't talk about their issues. They don't blame this thing or that thing on wins or losses or lackluster performances. They take on that full ownership. And I think that helps strengthen their mind as well. And that gives them some ease in the sense of, hey, they're not going to blame something and let it obsess over it in their minds and let that pollute their minds. They're just going to say like, okay, what can I do now moving forward to be better and be stronger and be faster? And then the last thing I'll say is just, I want to contrast that with something that's been popping up a lot recently, which is Michael Chandler's take on his loss to Charles Oliveira, which I think is turning a lot of fans off. But not only is it turning fans off, I think it's got to be a negative in general. And although I'm not a fighter, the way that I can relate to this is I think in business and in life and in any time where you're trying to tackle objectives or goals, if you have this constant blame mentality or excuse mentality, you're just going to be left with sort of like resentment to to whatever created these excuses or whatever you feel like you want to blame for your mistakes or things that didn't go your way. And I feel like that negative mindset holds you back in life, right? But I will say also too, as a fan, it's just not fun to hear that type of stuff from people that you're sort of looking up to as heroes, as idols, as people that you want to kind of look to for inspiration. So if we contrast sort of the way that Khamzat is and the way that Khamzat carries himself with this Michael Chandler interview, I think you'll get the point that I'm making.
Slice it and look at it from under a fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass. But the unified rules of mixed martial arts say that there is a line drawn from the crown of the head.
This is Michael Chandler trying to convince people that he didn't really hit Charles Oliveira in the back of the head. It's just so weird that he's deciding to take this stance where I don't know why he wouldn't just, he already lost the fight. Why doesn't he just come out and be like, yeah, man, I look back and that was a bummer. I wasn't trying to hit him in the back of the head, but I do see that several of those shots did hit him in the back of the head. And it just sucks because when you're in the heat of the moment, you're not necessarily realizing what's going on. Like, I don't know why he's taken this stance of wanting to be in denial of this. And again, I think it's turning a lot of fans off, but more importantly, I just don't feel like this is going to be beneficial or healthy for his own mindset in his quest to become better and I guess trying to win his next fight. But anyways, let's keep listening.
Head, if this were the back of the head,
Yeah.
the crown of the head down to the neck, 1 inch variance on either side. So you're talking about a 2-inch area on the back of someone's head.
And that 2-inch strip, that 2-inch mohawk, he definitely hit it in multiple shots, in multiple of those shots, either with his forearm and his hand. It was slowed down by MMA Joey, and that's what he's referring to, alluding to here. Oh, if you slow it down frame by frame, maybe you'll see that that's one of the guys that did slow it down frame by frame and showed that he did make contact with the back of the head. He's saying, oh, the back of the head in terms of the rules are different than what we would say is the back of the head, because he's just saying it's a 2-inch strip, right, coming down the center. But he definitely hit that. So anyways.
That is considered the back of the head. And if you watch 90% of the shots, at least, most of them, almost all of them, or at least where I was aiming, all of them, my fist was catching the ear. So if you're catching the ear, that is not the back of the head. And actually,
he may have been catching the ear. You'll see if you look at the replays. He was catching, he was hitting the back of the ear with his fist, but the forearm was making contact. Those are the shots that he's referring to right now. Those still would be considered back of the head shots.
The back of the head is not really what you and I would call the back of the head is not what the actual definition of the back of the head is. That 2-inch strip down the back of the head, and a referee who was within 2 feet away never said one thing about it.
Referees, though, routinely miss those. They don't call fighters out routinely for back of the head shots. They did in the Dustin Poirier fight. They actually, you see, I can't remember the name of the referee in the Dustin Poirier fight, but you see his hand go in and move Chandler's hand from like striking Dustin Poirier in the back of the head, which he still did multiple times. And then he goes on to argue about the fence grabs, saying they weren't really fence grabs. I don't know. It's super bizarre. But again, I'm just showing this, not to pile on to Michael Chandler, because I know he's getting a lot of hate right now, but I'm just showing this to contrast the mindset of somebody like Khabib, somebody like Khamzat versus Michael Chandler in this case. And I think we can see the writings on the wall, what the real championship mindset is and needs to be. And Khamzat's got it. Khamzat's got it in spades. So anyways, I think this shows the strength, the mental fortitude of Khamzat, the mental fortitude of a champion. We already know the skill set that he possesses, and now hopefully his health is going to be solid here to stay. He's also dialed in with his training. He's not overtraining anymore. That's what he said in another interview leading up to fight week for fight against Robert Whittaker. So it's very positive. I'm very optimistic. And I think we're finally going to see the rise of Khamzat Chimaev. He's going to take on Dricus du Plessis. Let's hope, fingers crossed, in February. Khamzat fans, let's go. We're about to see an amazing era of, in my opinion, who will soon be the greatest champion of all time in the UFC. That's all I got. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you like this video, make sure to click that like button. If you want to see more from the 10-7 MMA show, make sure to click subscribe. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we will see you in the next video. Take it easy.